Hello, everybody, and welcome to NinjaChris Silly History. And today we're gonna be talking about Philadelphia, the city, not the cheese. As I've had many jokes going on about it. What are you doing the Philadelphia cheese? It's like, nope, we're gonna go around the city. I'm not even sure if Philadelphia cheese was actually made in Philadelphia. It's not really an area that really was looking into. My focus this month was really looking into the city, and it's got quite an interesting history. I'll give it that. I hope everybody's doing very well and are very well prepared, and hopefully you're all trying to stay cool wherever you are in the world. Hopefully you're staying at your correct temperature and it's not confusing for you. Because right now I'm very hot, and after an hour of me doing all of this rambling and all that, I don't know where I'll be. I'll probably be knackered like usual. But anyway, let's have a look at where Philadelphia originally started. That it didn't really start as anything really. It wasn't called Philadelphia, obviously, not until 1682. But before, we had people like William Penn come across. There was already a native tribe living there, Native American tribe living there, called the Lenape people, and they'd been living there for thousands and thousands, about 10,000 years ago, when they first were found to be on that land. It's along the Delaware River and the Schuylkill River, so it's kind of sandwiched in between. There is where Philadelphia is. So during that time, they were just all they were just living their lives. They weren't anything super spectacular, but they just got along and they lived. But they did also keep themselves busy by doing things, and they were called the Lenape. So that means original or real people. So depending on, I guess, where you came from. And the other tribes are called them the ancient ones, because I believe that they've been there a lot longer. So yeah, they're gonna be more known. So they're called the Lenape. And the thing is, the Lenape people are still in existence today. They're just more modern looking, obviously, because back then they didn't really have all the luxury goods that we do now in this present day. But now they have their own society still, and we have their respect for them because of their culture, and quite a lot of their cultures survive today. I mean, they actually had a form of football, in a sense, called how do I say this? Passer Heyman, which is a version of Lenape football that they created. It was a man versus woman sport, which was interesting. It was kind of a comedy sort of game where the men could only kick the ball, but and they couldn't tackle the women or out like that. But the women could pick the ball up, kick the ball, and dive on. It's usually between brothers and sisters or husbands and wives. Maybe if they've ever had a falling out or something, the women could get their own back. Essentially, they were allowed to tackle and pick the ball up and kick the ball and do what they want. Or the men had to just kick the ball, but they had to put it through a goal still. So it essentially worked well, and I found out that they obviously did wear clothes as well. They weren't in the nuddy, so they interesting thing that I found out that they had moss and milkweed underwear, which which was essentially a thermal plant-based diaper or nappy in England. So, but they at least they were at least covering up their private parts. But I suppose it was fairly warm around that area, so you didn't wearing very little didn't really make too much difference to them. But yeah, the Lenape people, they were just chilling around, just enjoying time, just living the way that they knew how to play. But things got interesting when the Europeans started taking a little bit of interest in it. And it was the Dutch who first had a look in 1609. His name was Henry Hudson, who had a little look on the land, but never actually got on to land. He just essentially went up in his boat, had a little look, and then just sailed off. So he found like the Delaware Bay and that, didn't set foot on land though. And we found out at a later time that was an awful mistake to make, because in 1638, the Swedish and the Finnish managed to get there, and they created New Sweden, and they built Fort Christina. So they were the first actual ones to set foot on the land to meet with the Delaware people. So that's how the Europeans first really made contact. It was a bit of an awkward situation with the Dutch, but eventually in 1655, the Dutch actually conquered the Swedish colony, which they eventually carried on. It was also included a lot of the Anglo-Dutch wars, so we were fighting a lot with England versus the Dutch. So yeah, we were it became very awkward, but then in 1664 we eventually conquered what was called New Netherlands at the time. So we conquered the area. We're having it now. Get lost, you Dutch people. That's what we're basically saying. This is our land now. But they didn't really set up any forts or anything, or set up any cities. They just kind of got along with each other, and they were trading nicely and stuff, like cotton and all the other furs and stuff like that. So they were all getting along nicely, which was great. And I'm glad that we managed to get along in some form or manner, because when you've seen in the past when tribes meet overseas travelers, it never really went well. I mean, you only have to really look at places like South America, where the Portuguese and the Spanish couldn't agree on land. But in all fairness, I feel that the Lenape were quite happy to let the Europeans have a bit of land, because as you'll find out with William Penn in 1682, thanks to Charles II, who helped him find Philadelphia. Obviously in 1601, this is where Charles II let him make Pennsylvania, but it wasn't until 1682 when Philadelphia was actually made a thing. The funny thing is, as well, that the Delaware River wasn't actually called the Delaware River, and it was sort of an accidental thing, because there was a guy in 1610 called Samuel Argyll, who was an English sea captain who was blown off course by a heavy storm while sailing from Virginia. So he ended up saying the words Delaware, which is now Delaware. So it was one of those very, very interesting situations where you find out. But yeah, so that's basically how the Lenape got to making friends with Europeans as such. So the next, when I have a drink, we're going to go into William Penn and him trying to make deals and all that sort of stuff. So, hello, everyone. Hello, Annie. Annie? Anna, Philly Mouse. Hello. Yes, it's called The City of Brotherly Love. I've got that. I had that written down on my notes and I didn't say that. Thank you. If you're referring to Philadelphia cream cheese, Philadelphia cream was first created in 1872 by William Rowan, a dairyman from Chester, New York. Oh, right. Hey, Dan. Yeah, well, I love you in a sense too. I appreciate your presence here. Thank you. Yes, we're not. Yes, Dan, we're not actually talking about Philadelphia cheese. Unless if you want to go and make some Philadelphia cheese sandwiches, then be my guest. But I'm afraid I'm doing the city today. So yeah. The garlic chive one. Oh, you like garlic and chive? Ooh. You're going fancy, are you? I just prefer myself. Get a room, you two. Some people refer to the Lenape as the Delaware, named after the river. Yep, cool. Thanks. Yeah, where are we? Yeah, we're moving to William Penn's kind of friendly moving in. Essentially, again, he's quite diplomatic and he was very fair to the people. He essentially asked if he could come in, and it was named in early 1962 the City of Brotherly Love. Yes. And in November 1682, he spoke to Chief Tamanend, who was the Lenape chief at the time, and Penn and Tamanend, they decided on a 70 years peace, and that's exactly what they got, really, for a while. And in 1683 was the start of the construction of the Pensbury Manor, which was Penn's country estate north of the city, which is good for him. But unfortunately, in 1684, he had to leave for England because there was some political issues, and this is the time where Philadelphia had to kind of govern for itself, and they did very well with that. They looked after each other, they looked after the land, and Penn did eventually come back in 1699, and he returned to see a ravishingly growing port town. So he was happy that things went brilliantly. In 1701, he signed his Charter of Privileges, which I believe is basically a treaty if they're coming together. And then he left again. You know, the funny thing is, he only ever stayed in Philadelphia for 4 years, if you think about it. Because he came in 1682 and left in 1684. That's 2 years. And he came back in 1699 and then left again in 1701. Another 2 years. So, 4 years. Yet he's made such an impact in the background because he had to obviously go back to England and sort everything out. Because at that point, we were still part of they were still part of the 13 colonies. So, in order to work our business, William had to keep going back. And then when William Penn died in 1718, it started going a bit pear-shaped because during this time it was Penn's holy experiment, as I've labelled it, from 1682 to 1718. But the holy experiment was ran actually from 1682 to 1756. So the thing is, it started going downhill literally after the original William Penn passed away. His sons kind of took over, and because the boom of technology, it was an economic superpower during the 1718s to 1730s. Yeah, it was amazing. Global. I mean, we had Benjamin Franklin come over in 1723, which is a guy we will talk about at a later time, in a short while, actually. But right now, we're focusing on the Penn family and how they kind of destroyed the idea of the holy experiment, and that was the 70 years peace. The holy experiment was essentially the 70 years peace that William Penn was hoping would happen, but unfortunately didn't quite go to plan. And in 1737 we had something called the Walking Purchase, where the three sons of William Penn weren't as polite and as nice to them. They were essentially playing landlords just to get some money, and they were essentially kicking the Lenape people off the land. And I heard they were essentially making him run races to try, and if they won a race, they'd keep it. But little did they know that they were running against Olympic sprinters, so there was no chance they were ever going to win. So then they got kicked out of their city and I think they had to either head north or west, which is out of the 13 colonies. So it was chaos. And yeah, Thomas, John, and Richard Penn weren't really nice guys. It was really Thomas Penn at this point, because he was the one in the US at the time who was trying to make a quick buck, essentially. He was trying to get himself loaded, and John and Richard weren't exactly being helpful, but they were over in England. They were essentially checking the money out. They were the admin assistants, so to speak. They were looking at how much they needed and how, because they spent a lot on the wars and stuff that they were doing, so they needed the money. And the reason why the holy experiment actually ended was due to the French and Indian War. It was 2 years in at the time, but because the French-Indian War actually started in 1754, but the holy experiment still held on for another couple of years, so to speak. But everything it was a slow burner that things were just ending. It was just terrible, and I'm afraid when William Penn set that blueprint, unfortunately, it didn't pass down generations. Oh, well, it is what it is. You're always going to have the nice guys, but William Penn was a nice guy. He actually got involved in the community as well. He got involved. He actually went along with what they were doing. Actually started enjoying their traditions, actually blending in with the culture. It was fair. It was peaceful. It was, and all the other tribes were, and William Penn was a Quaker, so that's where the holy bit comes in. He was a very serious, I don't know, Christian, or was it a Quaker? It was more of a Catholic, but serious. They don't actually have service. They don't actually have church services. No pastors, no minister, or they essentially just had a quiet meeting of prayer every every weekend or something like that. And apparently, if the Lord took them and they started speaking, then the Lord was obviously wanted to say something. I mean, in some cases, that is still true today. And if that's what you believe, then fair enough. But I'm happy with Derby City Church, because I love the passion from everybody. And I just love having a community to go to. But yeah, the Quakers aren't bad people. They're just very strict on what they're doing. Newbies. Well, there's the time of William Penn, but he does cross over with Benjamin Franklin, obviously. Hey, Stephen, it's good to see you here. I'm well, thank you very much. Mouse, that's fine, Stephen. That's fine. I'm sure Philadelphia's gonna still be around when you next look. Though we know who's running the country, so I'm not sure. Anna, you've visited Penn's Manor many times while growing up. So many mum and family live not too far away from the Penn Treaty Park, where William Penn signed a treaty with the Lenape. Yeah, well, I don't know about your parents, but yeah, he did sign the treaty with them, and it was all wonderful. It was all great. But unfortunately, the sons just didn't have the same idea. They started wanting money. Feels the same as it is today. The weird thing about it is quite a lot of people probably didn't know about politics back then. They probably didn't understand it. I mean, the Lenape people. And the thing with William Penn is he actually took the time to learn their language as well. So that's how he could get involved in their culture. He could speak to them, could have a conversation, as you do when you join yourself into another country. But okay, it was Penn's Manor, otherwise known as Pensbury Manor, was the home built by William Penn in Tullytown. Many times gradually she's on popcorn. Oh, you're on about Kitten now. Hey, Terry. It's good to have you here. Never heard of them. Thomas, yeah, why don't you come more then, Stephen? You should come a bit more, then I'll be able to talk to you a bit there. But before doing Penn's Manor is the home of William Penn, the founder of Philadelphia, and whom the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is named after. Yeah. He's actually got statues at early 1900s on top of a townhouse or something, or was it that Penn's Manor? that the statue is on top of, because it was built in the 1900s, and apparently they'd set a rule that no building could be higher than that statue, because William Penn was just one of those guys who just made Philadelphia what Philadelphia. Well, he started the ball rolling. That will be Philadelphia City Hall. Thank you. I knew it was a big building. I couldn't remember which one. No, but thank you, Anna. But it's a very important. But there's a lot of memorabilia in there. I mean, I know I'm jumping ahead here, but I think in like 1976 was when they put up the Rocky Balboa thing from obviously the Rocky movies, which is something that a lot of people could probably seen probably all of them, including the Creed movies as well. So that statue, I think. Well, I assume it's still there. It was true that no building could be taller than the top of William Penn's hat on the statue, but they changed that in. Yeah, well, I've seen photos of Philadelphia now, and they're definitely a lot higher than William Penn's hat. Give you that one for now. Really has that bad stick. I'm not sure what you're on about now. But William Penn was a good man. It's just the people who follow. His sons didn't do the right thing, essentially. But now we should look into Ben. We're looking to Benji Franklin, because he definitely had a lot to do with the growing of Philadelphia. People have probably heard of Benjamin Franklin, but probably not known how important he was to the creation of the safety of Philadelphia as well. I mean, he came over in 1723. He was only about 21 years old or something, I think, and he made such an impact. The thing is, he had no money, nothing. He found a job as a printing apprentice, but he had to make a travel across to London during this time, from 1724 to 1726. But then, when he came back in 1727, he made his own little junto, 12 like-minded business working class men. And that lasted until 1757, but he basically owned his own printing press company. So he was great at making sure you had all the news and had all the knowings of what's going. The thing is, a lot of people who are around Benjamin Franklin, you get all this great big news and stuff, but you've got to think about what the little guys are doing in the background, having a drink in the pub. They probably don't care about all this political stuff, and it's kind of like, yeah. Thing is, if it wasn't for Benjamin Franklin and his science and stuff, because in 1731 he created the Library Company of Philadelphia, so he brought some reading into it. And early on during this, he worked with a guy called James Logan. He was basically the mentor of Benjamin Franklin at his earliest point, before he decided to go off and create without the assistance anymore. So and joined the library company that James Logan let him read a few of his books and stuff. So we got to learn about things. And then in 1736, he also built the Union Fire Company because they were sick of seeing buildings burning down and stuff like that. And it was during the time when they were used to having fires and stuff. It was, we needed a volunteer fire service essentially, which was good of him. And they made an American Philosophical Society in 1743. This was the colony's first scholarly association for scientific inquiry. And then that eventually led to the Academy of Philadelphia, which later became the University of Pennsylvania. Amazing growth, these things that he brought in. And then a year later, he brought in the lightning rod, which stopped lighting from burning down wooden colonial homes because the lights were quite open at the point. And it's going to set fire to the wood a little bit. He also helped with the street lights as well and put coverings on them so they kind of lasted longer. He did a load of these experiments and stuff. And then again, a year later, in 1751, he made Pennsylvania Hospital, which he built alongside a guy called Dr. Thomas Bond to provide the free medical help to the poor and mentally ill. So, yeah, he did an amazing thing, but then he started becoming a bit more political in that sense after that. But he still always had the scientist at heart. Okay, sorry. We'll get to his political in a bit. The rocket statue is located at the Philadelphia Museum of Art. That was it. You watched a documentary last year. Police don't go there. Pennsylvania is not a bad state. We are just quirky. You referred? Yeah. To Philadelphia is I feel Philadelphia is quite a nice place, as I've heard. It's separated into very many different parts, so I think you should just appreciate that the people from Philadelphia are enjoying life. Yes, they've come from awkward backgrounds, but this is why I'm trying to lead to the modern day area because, yeah, things started a heck a lot sketchy, but it does get better and people are living quite nicely. Philadelphia is like every other major city. Yes, America has amazing history, which is why I'm enjoying to do it. And quite a lot of my viewers are American, so I don't intend to disrespect them. Yes, the shower from. Yep. You worked at the hospital of the University of many years ago, and the campus is amazing. Thanks for that, Annie. That's Annie. Why do I keep calling you Annie? You're Anna. Where's that come from? Sorry, I'm getting it completely wrong now. But hopefully your time at the hospital was fruitful. But we can thank good old Benji for that. I don't know about no politics in the World Cup, mate. But yes, Philadelphia did host a few matches. Philadelphia is known for a lot of firsts in the US. First libraries, first post office, first major, first unit, first fire service, among many other achievements. Yep. think I mentioned them. Yep. Philadelphia is truly the melting pot. Different ethnicities and religious groups. Forgot the first eye hospital called Willis Eye Hospital. Another hospital I worked out back in the day. Now, don't worry about it. I'm not insulting. I'm not trying to insult you, Anna. Don't worry. Don't mind, but okay, fair enough. You consider it a badge of honor. Very well. Yeah. The World Cup ended up being okay. England beat France 6-4. Get in there. What a nail-biting match to stay up for, but I'm glad I stayed up for that one. I don't think it was held in Philadelphia, but I definitely know I like that game. And because the World Cup was, yeah, it was good. It was good. It's just hard to stay up for, but I enjoyed myself. Okay, I'm glad I'm not insulting you, because it's not something I want to do. And yeah, well, you were talking about Benjamin Franklin being with the post service, because he was the postmaster of Philadelphia from 1737 to 1753. But at that time, the mail was so slow. Most of the time, the mail just sat there before it eventually got sent. But then he became a deputy postmaster general, which was in 1773, which lasted until 1774, which made the mail a lot more faster. He had to report to the British postmaster, making money for them. So the British were getting all the plaudits, but Benjamin was just basically doing all the work. But the British leader guy was really taking all the credit for it. Then he'd gotten so wise to it, because it was the general till 1774, but 1775 he became the US Postmaster General from 1775 to 1776. So he became essentially a rebel by stealing the control of the mail system from the UK. So they were, because he felt the British were probably using it. He was sick of them using it for their own benefit. He wasn't going to be a middleman anymore. He wanted to take control for his own country. And this is where the Declaration of Independence came in with the second Constitution. And this is why we need the Declaration at the time. The thing is, the Declaration of Independence wasn't necessarily to end a war. It was more of a taunt, as I see it, as it was more of a, we'll be independent, but if you do decide to come after us, we will defend ourselves. So that's my view on the Declaration of Independence. I always thought it was the end, but the war waged on till 1783, so America won in the end. We know that. But during all of this, it was quite a time during all of that. But there is one particular war during the American Revolution which obviously really stands out, which was actually called the Philadelphia Campaign, which took place from 77 to 1778, which was very useful. And but to build up to all of this, there was a lot of protests and all this, because they had the Stamp Act, which basically meant anything that the Americans wanted to use, the British, they had to essentially pay the British just to use a piece of paper because of Benjamin Franklin and all his newspaper articles and stuff. They wanted to get something from all the stuff that he wrote. Yeah, they couldn't have that. But eventually that only lasted a year, thankfully, because there was enough riots to shut them all up. But, yeah. The Boston Tea Party, but that was essentially saying we're going to have a war soon, even though they had the first Continental Congress, but I think that was held in Philadelphia. But the Second Continental Congress in 1775 was, and yeah, the war started in Boston and then started coming inland because they had the Battle of Concord and Lexington to start everything up. And then we went through New York and New Jersey, their campaign, which led to the Philadelphia campaign, which eventually led to the Battle of Brandywine and the Battle of Germantown. And the British, who were loyal to the king, they started coming into the country and started taking all the fine homes and all of that, which was a bit sad, but thankfully they were only taking it out on the rich. But eventually it was because Washington had to move to Valley Forge because that's where he was living at the time, in the Valley Forge. Because he had to escape Philadelphia because these rich English guys were taking out the rich Americans and staying in their home until the British had to evacuate in 1778, which was because of the French, because we were heading towards the French Revolution as well around this time as well. So then they had to return to Congress. Then we had a mutiny in Pennsylvania, and everything sort of sorted itself out, but was still trying to work on like abolishing slavery and stuff like this with the US Constitution. I mean, in 1787 he served on the US Constitution. He served as the oldest delegate at the Constituted Convention in Philadelphia. He became the Pennsylvania Abolition Society president in 1790, which basically meant he was trying to say no more slaves. But unfortunately, in 1790, that was when Benjamin Franklin passed away. So, but Philadelphia at that point became the state capital. Became the state capital, while for a temporary 10 years before it moved to Washington DC. So Philadelphia was a temporary placement at that particular moment in time, which was good. How's everybody doing? His name is Taboo here. Southampton. Oh, you might have a visitor soon. One of your exes is from New York. Very interesting. Queen Mary II. Interesting. because that was the Queen Mary who actually married William III, or William of Orange, who was Dutch, which was quite interesting. Oh, Chris, those British weren't saints. Oh, I know, we definitely weren't. But, well, we wanted to keep the 13 colonies, but US wanted to be separate because, well, they were doing stuff while the British weren't actually there. They were essentially governors of themselves because none of the British were actually there. So it made them realize, hang on, we could do this ourselves. We should become independent here. If they want to bring it, come on. But we're independent now, mate. So in a way, it became a sort of civil war in a sense, but not actually a civil war. But yeah, it's nice that you want to visit America, and yeah, depends on the. We're not happy about the Stamp Act and the Townsend Act, and tossing the tea. Make oh. Valley Forge is not. Yeah, yeah, Valley. Well, it didn't. Apparently, it's really cold at Valley Forge. So George Washington had to basically freeze his buttocks off for a few years before he could actually move back to Philadelphia. You know, the funny thing about this time is that the people consider the wars them, because history books consider them all fighting all the time. But that's not generally the case. But it's an amazing thing. But I realise I've really just been talking about the war of independence in a sense here. But yeah, we enjoy what's going on, and the thing is, when the 1800s came around, it started to become more religion based because people started coming across, and it wanted and it became slavery as well. But during the early 1800s was a revolution. There was obviously the Industrial Revolution in Britain, so we made loads of factories, and it became some sort of economic industrial. You were making everything. You had all factories, though you did have cheap slave labor in order to keep them all running, but nevertheless they kept running. The thing is, it became more sad towards the end of it because to make it even cheaper, they had to they decided to use children in the factories, which is a terrible thing. But then something in 1903, they had a march to try and say, no, we have rights as well. It's sad knowing that these sort of things happened, but it led nowadays that a lot of factories have actually closed down. Am I not a man or a brother? Beans on toast. Original ocean liner Queen Mary was named after Queen Mary, the consort. Yeah, Mary of Tech. Okay. Nothing independent about the UK. Yes, it was one of the most bitter winters in 1771. Oh, we're on beans and toast now, are we? Right, okay. Well, I'm sure Philadelphia can help you with some beans on toast. Though I'm sure you'd like a Philly cheesesteak as well, because I found out that the cheesesteak was invented in 1930 by Pat Oliveri at the hot dog vendor. The thing is, it didn't actually have any cheese on it. It was more of a steak sandwich, but the cheese wasn't added until 1940, at least according to my research. Very, very interesting. Good surprise. Child labour remains a huge problem around. Thankfully, it's been reducing anyway. Yeah, thankfully. What? What's happening here? You're ganging up on me now. I can't believe the time's at 50 minutes already. Really been getting into the chat, but been a lot of stuff in the 1800s. There was one of the most big things around 1880, 1844 was a nativist riot, or as it's more commonly known, the Bible or prayer riot, which was because of the Irish coming over and they wanted to bring their Catholics against the other. They both shared the same faith, but they wanted to do it in a different way. They had a different kind of Bible and wanted, so it ended up being a riot. 2 in 1 year. The first riot was in May and the second was in July over Kensington and the Southwark districts. So it was very, very painful times for religion. But during the 1800s, it was that sketchy time with my religion's better than yours, your religion is rubbish. In regard to the history, however, Pats and Genos are tourist traps, as they are far better places to acquire one from. It's. I just love the look of it. The thing, and they didn't really get involved in the American Civil War. The closest that they got was the Battle of Gettysburg, but during the Civil War, they gave out a lot of supplies, soldiers, and they took in a lot of medical patients. So they did have something to do with it. And the leader and the Confederate leader, Jefferson Davis, his family was born in Wales, and his great grandfather then moved to Philadelphia in 1701. And his grandfather and parents also lived there. So Philadelphia does have some history connected to the Civil War in a sense. Obviously, Jefferson Davis wasn't born there, but his parents and his line for the rest of it was. So yeah. So the most global industrial time was about the 1900 to 1950, because they got the locomotive works and was it a weathermakers or something? He did a lot of stuff with clothes and stuff, so they were building ships as well, which definitely came in handy for World War One and Two. So it was a lot of industrial stuff. But when we got past the 1950s to the 1980s, factories closing, it was all lost millions of people, and with political shifts, Republican to Democratic after those riots. And in the 70s, like, music became a big thing, like disco. They did Live Aid as well, apparently, in 1985 in the JFK Stadium. And obviously sports is a big thing there. I mean, you have your Philadelphia Phillies and was it 69ers, 79ers? I'm not sure. I'm not good with the American sports, but I know that you did. You've got a pretty darn good team. And the funny thing I found about it is the fact that early on in the life of your journey on, they used to actually put sit on flat roofs, just so they could sit on top and watch the games because they could see them. Because was it the Connie Mack spike walls where they in 1935 they could watch the athletics baseball games free from their flat roofs. So yeah, that's it. I'm just looking into what they trying to look at fun things that are fun. And we can't forget the cornbread guy. Was it Daryl Cornbread, who basically turned graffiti into an art? You had all the stuff. You bought disco, jazz, all of that came with. But the fact is, you were getting people from like Africa and stuff who brought their own culture, and then you all kind of adapted it to suit, and it became amazing. You remember watching Live Aid from the JFKs? Roller skating. I'm great, and I'm actually amazed at how they have turned graffiti into what. And you've done so much, and you've got so much. You've still got women you've got cyber scandals now as well. People with the Hitchbot or something was like an international travel robot to multiple countries, but in 2 weeks it was brutally murdered or something. And still going on now from 2021. Apparently you've got a Great Pen Museum scandal because there was bones of a 14-year-old girl in a cardboard box, was used as props in movies and stuff. And it was used as a bomb in 1985 or something like that. And apparently the people aren't happy. I think it's the family. They aren't particularly happy. And apparently there was a comical thing that I found here, that apparently they greased a pole in 2018. The Philly police greased poles so drunks don't climb them. That sounds quite humorous. I would like to see them try and climb up and then suddenly slide back down and be like a cartoon or something like that. Oh man, there was another one. It was a rotisserie chicken martyr. There's a guy called Alexander Tominsky who eats a chicken for 40 days. On the 40th, they gather on the Delaware River pier, where he eats his final one. So yeah, wow. Thanks guys for being here tonight. You're all as amazing as always. But I hope you've all had fun, because I always enjoy looking at the history. Yes, the move incident was a horrific chapter in Phyllis. One I watched live. The bones in question were discovered at the University of Pennsylvania and used for research. But Chris had a plan until I showed up. No, it wasn't that. I've got my notes written down. I just took a lot longer on the more historical parts than. So, yeah, I wasn't. Yes, flat roofs, because that was the way they did back then. They got up on buildings, because stadiums weren't exactly high class as you've got now, so you could just see into them. It was like I guess it was like sitting onto a non-league football match, where if you live in the buildings next to it, you could probably look out your window and just watch the match, even if you weren't a fan, you just watch the games. But I'm grateful that you've all come, and I hope you join me next month, because next month we're doing the wonderful history of watermelons. just to throw you completely off there. Yeah, we're gonna have one of my silly months. I'm gonna do a top. I mean, I considered this one as a real topic, but I've enjoyed being able to chat with you guys. And please, yes, Anna, thank you. It's been a pleasure talking to you all again. Thank you. See you. Bye bye, everybody.